Thank you to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this video.
The Trump administration is pulling the approval for congestion pricing, saying it is, quote, backward and unfair. Everyone should have access to the city, not just the elite.
So, New York Subway is about to go through some changes because the city's money-generating taxation cameras will soon be shut off. But it's recently come out that even with these cameras charging cars over $1 billion a year, all that money wasn't going to be enough for the subway improvements promised by our leaders. But even though progressives are losing their minds over this, it might actually be a good thing for the subway, just not in the way most people think.
Learn how hell feels.
New Yorkers encounter this every day, going to work and school. Mentally ill people terrorizing others on the train, clearly in need of help. Recently, there have been high-profile cases of psychosis turning into violence.
President Donald Trump tweeted, "Long live the king." I'm here to say New York hasn't labored under a king in over 250 years.
The MTA tonight asking for $68 billion to fund its capital plan for subway improvements. And the head of the agency is turning to lawmakers in Albany for help.
We need to make sure that the structures, the tunnels, the elevated structures don't fall down, fall apart. We need to make sure that the power systems, which blew up recently a couple of times in Brooklyn and Columbus Circle, are not left to rot.
They didn't feel safe riding the subways of New York City, and we had urged the governor to, instead of tolling people to try to force them onto the transit system, to instead make this city's transit system safe.
We'll roll out substantial additional improvements to our transit deployments to be even more responsive to the terrifying acts of random violence, because people don't feel safe in our subways.
So New York's hated driving taxes will soon be a thing of the past, marking another promise kept by President Trump. And although this will deprive New York of money that was supposed to fix the subway, nobody running this place wants to admit it was never gonna do any such thing. Which anyone with half a brain could probably figure out just by using it, as the subway in its current form already costs over $20 billion a year to operate, while it doubles as the site of an ongoing humanitarian homelessness crisis where many neglected New Yorkers live on a full-time basis. Because for some reason our leaders can't figure out how to use the billions they already get to fix this place while giving people somewhere else to stay. And look around, there are red flags everywhere that rewarding this place with more money is a terrible idea. Because every cent that comes down here gets wasted on progressive initiatives like spiked barriers that claim to stop people from jumping the turnstiles but don't, or on gates that are so accessible they make fare evasion effortless and are theoretically supposed to convince more law-abiding riders to use the subway because of how easy it is to get inside, where for just $3 you can put your life at risk while you take the train to work. Speaking of being at risk, NYPD studies show that the most likely person to assault or rob you while you're riding the subway is the person who didn't pay to ride it in the first place. Which brings us to the real reason President Trump's removal of New York's taxation cameras is a good thing. Not only did they disproportionately tax the poor, but now our leaders have to use the billions they've already got to make some changes around here, instead of stealing more of our money just to waste it. Something they've never had to do before, which is shocking because even though they constantly complain about how the infrastructure down here is hundreds of years old, the budget to run this place is $6 billion higher today than it was over 15 years ago. And still nothing down here has been fixed or improved like they promise. Every year they demand more of our money. And as you're about to see, while President Trump is keeping his promises, the subway we have today is the result of promises that were made and broken on purpose. This right here is pretty alarming, and it could be a security risk. You've got what looks like a whole bunch of equipment back here behind a door which is not even locked. It is just flapping in the breeze. And the entire subway system is run in a manner that makes it look like nobody cares what happens down here. And we wonder why it doesn't run properly. We wonder why people are stealing subway trains and taking them on joyrides. It's because this entire place is the combination of decades of promises that were made and never kept after the people of New York paid for them. They actually arrested 2 of the teenagers that stole a train the other week. But even though our leaders are always scheming and coming up with new plans to get more of our money to waste, the latest way they were going to do it was so bad and so unfair that the president decided to get involved and cancel it, which might actually be the best thing to happen to the subway.
He, as a New Yorker, understands how damaging this program is to our city's economy. This was an unfair toll, particularly considering the residents that I represent. This was a double toll that they were facing to go into the city in which...
So this plan was supposed to generate $1 billion a year by taxing cars to then pay for improvements down here in the subway. Improvements to infrastructure, improvements to train reliability, and other things we've been promised time and time again but have yet to see down here. Yet none of this money was going to go into keeping riders safe. And when you look at the improvements we've already got, like escalators that don't seem to work, it's hard to see how giving this place any more would accomplish anything. And although somehow the money we spend on fixing the subway never seems to make it down here, this time things were supposed to be different. Specifically, 80% of the money from these billion-dollar cameras was supposed to make its way into the subway and change our lives. And you know, 80%, that's way better than the 0% that makes it down here today. But it gets even better because according to the MTA, who runs the subway, taxing cars was also supposed to pay for updated signals that would improve service reliability, reduce delays, and lead to service increases in the future. Which is pretty strange because that's something New Yorkers have heard before. In fact, you can see the MTA's webpage has been promising these since way back in 2009 when they first started installing them. We've been promised signal improvements and accessibility improvements for years, and it's never happened. And the city has so little respect for its residents that it's not even trying to keep it a secret.
People know that the system is old, but I don't think they realize just how old it is. They see the beautiful old architecture in the stations and they think it's just historic. What our riders don't realize, though, is that in our system, it's not just the architecture that's 100 years old. It's a lot of the basic technology as well, the infrastructure.
So this promo was filmed back in 2015, and as you can see, our leaders have been using the age of this place to shake us down for more money for a long time. They always talk about how old it is and how we finally need to do something about it, but then when people finally pay for it, it never happens. And the never-ending promise of more infrastructure and less delays and a better subway is turned into a never-ending grift, which our leaders keep coming back to every time their piggy bank is empty, constantly telling us how this place is old and falling apart, while reminding us that public transit investments are an investment in the futures of every single New Yorker.
However, the money set to be raised is not expected to be enough to fully fund the MTA's improvements and expansions. Lieber maintains the money the MTA is asking for is part of a good investment.
I think it's time to retire the old talking points about how the MTA doesn't manage money. This is a new MTA, and we're all about it.
Whoa, did we just hear of more promises of a better subway tomorrow if we would only pay for it today? Unbelievable. There's no way anybody should be expected to believe that, because all around us are the signs of a city agency that doesn't know what to do with the money it's already got. And what's crazy is while our leaders keep complaining about how old this is and how it needs new signals, they keep spending all of their money on stuff like this LCD panel right here to tell us how late the trains are. It's almost like we've got this existential problem, which is how terrible the service is, and our leaders always promise to fix it and then use the money that was supposed to fix it on other things. Which means that the New York City subway is a lot like your broke friend who keeps saying that he just needs a few extra bucks this one last time to get his life together, to clean himself up, to turn it all around, and then you give him the money, and what does he do with it? He doesn't get his life together or fix anything. And the next time you see him, he comes back and he says, "Hey man, you got an extra couple bucks? I could really use it. It's the last time, I promise." And the worst thing about all of this is that our friend, the subway, is continuing to spiral downwards out of control because they're losing more money every single year on the one thing that is supposed to keep this place going, which would be fare evasion. It costs them $800 million a year, just $200 million less than the billion-dollar congestion pricing plan that the president just canceled. And by taxing cars, they were going to offset their losses from people who ride the trains for free, revealing a darker side to this whole plan and giving us another reason to all be glad that it's gone. Most people don't know this, but if you're seriously hurt, that accident could be worth millions of dollars. And if you're injured in any way, you need to know how to protect your rights. Which is why you might want to know about today's video sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm, who doesn't just settle for lowball offers. In fact, over the last few months, they've seen record judgments, like a $12 million judgment in the state of Florida that was 34 times higher than whatever insurance was offering. Add to that $26 million judgments and $6.8 million judgments in Philly and New York, and it should be pretty clear that Morgan & Morgan is not your typical law firm because they win a lot. Plus, it takes just minutes to see if you've got a case, and you can do it all from your phone. Step 1, submit your claim online. Step 2, Morgan & Morgan's experts get to work investigating. And step number 3, Morgan & Morgan only gets paid if you win, which is what you want. And they can do this because they've got over 100 nationwide offices and over 1,000 local lawyers who are ready to fight to get you the best results possible. You can start your claim with Morgan & Morgan by following this link right here, which will also be in the description of this video. And remember, there's no fee unless they win. Once again, thank you to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this video. So the worst thing about the New York City subway is that its problems are glaringly obvious, and the solutions to those problems, as you're about to see, are also glaringly obvious. But in order to understand why they will never be implemented, you've got to realize that the people running this place never have to do anything. They can just keep asking for more money and they get it every single time, which is why our leaders have no plans to collect the money this place needs from the very people using it.
And this is proof of this. Check out this video that we got earlier today. In the span of about 10 minutes, with our big clunky cameras looking on, one person after the next jumped or crawled underneath the arm of the turnstile. They were completely undeterred.
So this is the first way that you start fixing the subways. You get the people who ride it to pay for it. And we've actually got a way to do that right here. But because it works, we won't use it. And that would be these rotating gates. You could install these everywhere. They're decades old and they'd fix your fare evasion problems immediately. But not only are our leaders uninterested in doing what we already know works, we've got other problems. Like, you see this gap right here? Look at this. This fits a human hand. I've seen people reach through this and open this entry gate right here to get in for free without paying or having a stranger open it up for them. And once you realize that the last thing on anyone's mind is collecting fares from people who ride the subway, every other problem this place has will start to make sense as well, especially the crime problem we've got going on down here, which one study says are overwhelmingly connected to people not paying to use the train. What a surprise. Who would have ever imagined that the criminal underworld, if you let it commit minor crime, will then go on to commit more serious crimes? And here we are trying to convince people that the subway is always a good investment and that it should be respected and that it's necessary. Yet our leaders don't treat it that way at all. They don't think it's a good investment. They don't even care if it works properly, which is explained by the nonstop delays and the fact that we've never gotten the new signals we keep being told are just around the corner. And since our city has no intention of passing laws that would jail fare evaders, people are just gonna keep coming down here and using the trains for free, revealing that the money needed to run this place is never gonna come from the customer base, something that would tank any privately run business. But that reveals another problem. As much as the subway is a dangerous nightmare of a contraption that nobody wants to spend any time in, the visible problems this place has and the fact that it's always running out of money aren't necessarily its fault. Instead, the problems down here can directly be traced back to an unwillingness on behalf of our city officials to lock up criminals. And sadly, as you're about to realize, just as getting the subway to run properly isn't on anyone's agenda, neither is locking up the folks who are ruining it for everybody.
Those crescent-shaped turnstiles are over there. They add about 4 to 6 inches of height to the turnstile. Would that deter you from jumping over?
No, not at all. I mean, I wouldn't jump over, but I don't see that as being a deterrent.
So this is embarrassing. Here we are wondering why our subway system has a crime problem and wondering why it has a money problem. Both of these are connected. But instead of using the tools we already have to fix both of these issues, we're spending money to make them both worse. Just look at these spikes right here. These things were expensive to install, and they're part of a pilot program that should help our city figure out if they're a way to stop fare evasion. Yet not only do they not work to stop people who might want to jump over the turnstile turnstile or crawl under it. The only way you could justify installing something like this would be if it's not supposed to do the thing you're saying it does. Stuff like this isn't put here to get people to pay to ride the train. It was put here so that somebody could get paid to put it in. Revealing that the New York City subway isn't just used as a way to extract money from New Yorkers, it's also used as a way to enrich whatever favored contractor was chosen to install these things. And this is honestly disgusting. We're told that the subway is very important, that our city relies on it, and that investing in it is investing in New York, yet all the money that comes from it is taken for nefarious purposes that don't benefit the people or the subway itself. But as you're about to see, the foolish decision-making behind things like these turnstile contraptions is also the reason we have the congestion cameras in the first place. Because not only do they exist to solve problems that are entirely self-inflicted, millions of dollars were needlessly wasted while these problems were created.
And let's also look at some of the changes that our government made that made it miserable to drive in New York City. The bike lanes, taking away all sorts of lanes, parking spots to accommodate bicycles.
So contrary to what progressives who are in favor of congestion pricing will tell you, is that the number one cause of congestion itself isn't cars or buses or even traffic. No. It is smaller roads. This right here is a pedestrian walkway, which just a couple of years ago didn't exist. Cars can't drive down here, nor are cars allowed to drive down the bike lane. This also wasn't here a few years ago. This clear lane here is only for taxis. That's off limits. And look at this. You've got 3 lanes. Here's some old Google Maps imagery. You can see there used to be 4 lanes here instead of 3. And if you make your roads 25% smaller, of course, traffic is going to go way up. That's the problem. That's why we've got gridlock and traffic. We shrunk the roads. All of this empty space you see behind me created our traffic congestion problems and gave our politicians an excuse to go after those problems with a new solution, which just involved raising taxes on people. All to fix problems that were deliberately created without anyone thinking about the consequences. When the real solutions people should be focused on are right in front of us. What do you think about that? Are the problems New York City's got in its subway logical and preventable? Could you solve them by collecting money from the people who use the subway and sending people to jail? Or are they a mystery? Is there something I'm missing here? Let me know. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.